Okay, quick visual test. Are you ready? What is this a picture of? Look closely. What is this a picture of? Is this a picture of a vase? Or is this a picture of two faces staring at each other? Which one do you see? All right, how about this one? What do you see here? Do you see a little cartoony saxophone player guy with a big nose? Or do you see a young woman's face? Which one do you see? For some reason, I can only see the images in white when I squint at these things. I don't really know what that means. This one's a good one. Is this an artsy drawing of a man's face with kind of big eyes? Or is this the word liar written in cursive, if you look at it on the diagonal? Okay, this one drove segment producer Mike Yarvitz absolutely nuts today. He can only see the old woman in this image, the old woman, right? He can see. The young woman, however, he does not believe me that it's there. Can you see the young woman in this picture or just the old woman? How about when we put it next to the other version of the young woman? Does that help? Mike says he still can't even see it with that. Here's another one. Here's another one. This one's actually a video.
I hear all this, well, this is class warfare, this is whatever. No, there is nobody in this country who got rich on his own. Nobody. You built a factory out there, good for you, but I want to be clear. You moved your goods to market on the roads the rest of us paid for. Yep. You hired workers the rest of us paid to educate. You were safe in your factory because of police forces and fire forces that the rest of us paid for. You didn't have to worry that marauding bands would come and seize everything at your factory and hire someone to protect against this because of the work the rest of us did. Now look, you built a factory and it turned into something terrific or a great idea. God bless. Keep a big hunk of it. But part of the underlying social contract is you take a hunk of that and pay forward for the next kid who comes along.
You have seen that video of Massachusetts Democratic Senate candidate Elizabeth Warren on this show before. Undoubtedly, you've seen it a bunch of times on the internet before as well. I just today had a friend's mom send it to me in this format, where the whole quote is printed out in tiny, 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 inspirational, kitty hanging from a tree, hang in there form. There's no I in team. Elizabeth Warren is one of the nation's most effective communicators on economic issues and the economic interests of the middle class. And that video of her, that clip of her using that skill, making that argument in whoever's living room she was in while campaigning for the U.S. Senate in Massachusetts, that clip, it's like the economic populist version of Dramatic Chipmunk. Never gets old. God, I love that. In the Republican mind, however, that clip of Elizabeth Warren in that living room is not just a viral video sensation. In the Republican mind this year, that clip of Elizabeth Warren making that case you just heard her make, in the Republican mind, that Elizabeth Warren clip is the same thing as this. Where, sure, some people see a vase, but it's just as likely that you will see this picture as two faces. Where, sure, some people see the young lady, but people like Mike Yarvitz can't see the young lady at all. They can only see the old lady. After that clip of Elizabeth Warren explaining, in effect, the we're all in this together idea of economic populism, after that clip got people standing up and applauding their email and cheering at their TV and making little GIF files like this, Republicans also started circulating that clip. But Republicans' idea was that people would see this clip. They would hear this message as articulated by Elizabeth Warren, and they would be horrified by it. Elizabeth Warren puts those villainous job creators in their place, says the conservative website The Daily Caller. Run-of-the-mill demagoguery from Elizabeth Warren, says the conservative Boston Herald. Rush Limbaugh, Elizabeth Warren is a parasite.
Those people who start those companies and those factories are creating jobs. I mean, aren't they giving back to the community by creating jobs first?
There's nothing in what she says that makes that case.
Fox News has been playing it over and over and over again. The right seems to think that people hearing Elizabeth Warren talk about the middle class and talk about fairness in the American economy, that will somehow hurt her. It might even hurt the whole Democratic cause. Now even the Republican senator who Elizabeth Warren is trying to unseat in Massachusetts, he is sending around that video of her as a fundraising thing. Scott Brown's campaign saying, quote, Elizabeth Warren and her inflammatory rhetoric will divide our country and our Commonwealth. because nothing divides like a "we're all in this together" economic message. One of these things is not like the other. Republicans are banking on people being turned off by a pro-middle-class economic fairness message. And maybe Rush Limbaugh and the Boston Herald and Scott Brown are turned off by that message. But the Elizabeth Warren thing is not so much a vase versus faces thing, where two people can definitely be counted on to see two totally different things when they look at it. The Elizabeth Warren message, if you look at the polling, is much more like dramatic chipmunk. I mean, everybody is sort of into it. Everybody likes it. It is not a polarizing thing. The tax millionaires Buffett rule, for example, is polling this week at 73% support. 73%. It is hard to demagogue a message that popular. But in the Republican mind this year, they think that they can. The Progressive Change Campaign Committee put out a big announcement today that they have already raised $375,000 for Elizabeth Warren's Senate race in Massachusetts. And while that is exciting news for Elizabeth Warren's supporters, if you take the big picture view of this announcement from the PCCC is sort of the financial equivalent of damning with faint praise. Because here's the big picture. In total, liberal activists say they have raised about $915,000 for Elizabeth Warren. Here's that in context against what Scott Brown's has raised. There's Elizabeth Warren's known money on the left there in the blue bar, and then there's Scott. Actually, you know, the bar just looks like it goes off the top of the screen. I think we have to pull back a little more here. Can we pull back? Yeah. Okay. I guess we have to pull back just a little bit more. A little bit. Okay, still just runs off the top of the screen. Maybe pull one more out. Can we do one? Okay, yeah, there we go. All right. See, the problem with getting the graph to scale here is that you can't even really see the Elizabeth Warren money on here when you pull back to see all of Scott Brown's money. Maybe we do it as a pie chart instead. Ah, there we go. See, this is Elizabeth Warren's known money as compared to Scott Brown's known money at this point. See, it's that tiny, teeny, tiny little blue sliver. That's the big picture. Why does Scott Brown have this much money? Why does Scott Brown have Rocky Mountain High, light your cigars with your $100 bills, make furniture out of your cash bundles money like this lying around? He's got that kind of money because of Wall Street. Among all 100 United States senators, Scott Brown ranks #1 right now in campaign contributions from hedge funds, as well as the venture capital industry. Scott Brown has taken the second most money of all senators from private equity and investment firms and the securities and investment industry. Scott Brown ran for Senate as the normal guy who drives a truck, right? But at this point, Scott Brown is essentially a hedge fund who drives a truck. But as long as we are talking big picture here, the very big picture, the globally big picture is this. When Wall Street imploded at the end of the Bush presidency and our financial system collapsed because of its own malfeasance, because Wall Street made themselves rich playing insane clown casino with other people's real money, when that all came crashing down, we were able to keep this country out of a Great Depression, but not out of the massive recession from which we have not yet recovered. And the way we kept ourselves out of that Great Depression was by rescuing Wall Street, which means that we do still have a financial system in this country. We do still have a banking system, but it didn't exactly fix the problem that got us there in the first place, nor did it stop the repercussions of that collapse that we barely lived through in 2008. And the big global big picture right now is that the next repercussion, the next thing that is about to collapse, is Europe. Europe is a third of the entire world's economy. Right now, European banks and European countries are going through the same sort of trauma that we went through back in 2008. They do not know if they're going to be able to save their financial system or if there's going to be calamitous, uncontrolled defaulting and chaos. The way we saved our banking system, of course, was TARP, the bank bailout, and that did save us from going into a Great Depression, and it kept us out of calamitous default, but it also let those Wall Street banks, the people who caused the crisis, get away effectively scot-free. They quite literally never paid for what they did to the country, and now those banks are back stronger than ever, behaving essentially just like they did before and making tons of money, which is why almost all of the TARP money has been paid back because Wall Street is doing so great right now. One of the things they are doing with their not-so-hard-earned gains right now is that they are pouring money into the American political system to make sure the Elizabeth Warrens of the world never get anywhere. Their investment in Scott Brown last time around, after all, paid off in a Scott Brown brokered deal to keep the banks from paying to make sure taxpayers would have to pay that instead of the poor, poor, poor banks. He saved them $19 billion. Goldman Sachs, which has a starring role in the European collapse because Greece is going to be the first country to go, and Greece paid Goldman Sachs to hide their debt problem. Goldman Sachs here at home, we just learned this week that they spent over $1 million lobbying in the last quarter alone against Wall Street reform. Wall Street money is flowing hand over fist to the Republican presidential campaign of Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney promising a wholesale repeal of any major regulation of Wall Street that has been implemented since the financial collapse. And so in this big picture, in this environment, frankly, some sort of inchoate, bottom-up, indefinite expression of anger at Wall Street and anger at their control over our lives and our country now is probably a little overdue. The Occupy Wall Street protests in New York have been going on for 12 days now. Most of the media attention they have received thus far has been because of violent and rather outrageous police tactics used against the protesters. But the reason this movement is growing, and in fact spreading to other American cities now, is not because of some message about police tactics toward protesters. That is not the larger point. The larger point is the basic message, the basic point about who caused the mess the country is in right now. Who has figured out how to benefit from it, and who is stopping us from fixing it. And again, attention to that feels a little overdue. Joining us now is Chris Hayes, host of the new and already great Up with Chris Hayes, airing weekend mornings on MSNBC. Chris is also editor-at-large of The Nation. And Chris, I've never seen your sailor shirt before. It's adorable.
Why, thank you.
It's very nice.
Adorable is what I was going for.
It is. It's fetching. Is that better?
That's great.
All right. Whether or not most people agree with direct action as a political tactic, and I think that's something you either are inclined toward or you're not, do you think the Occupy Wall Street folks are tapping into what is, in effect, a very mainstream sentiment that hasn't had a real political outlet yet?
Yeah, that's exactly what I think what they're doing. I think that part of the kind of cognitive dissonance people experience in first seeing Occupy Wall Street, and I saw it myself, was the disconnect between the way that we couch these issues in mainstream American politics, middle class, etc., and the image of direct action of kids sleeping in sleeping bags in a park. And those two have somehow become disparate in our imaginations because we have this sort of mainstream political discourse about the middle class and mainstream's getting screwed, and we have lost, I think, in some ways, the conception of politics outside of those channels. And I think what is exciting about Occupy Wall Street, and I think what has captured people's imagination, is a feeling that the normal channels don't feel like they're working. That, I think, is really the thing that is most powerful about it, and the thing that people share is that people feel like the normal channels of sort of feedback into the system aren't working, that their voices are being ignored, and that they don't have control. And even if this is a cri de coeur, even if this is inchoate or unfocused, it feels like some sort of voice in the wilderness saying, look, everything is broken right now. And I feel that way every day, waking up and coming to this building to go read the internet or talk to people as a reporter. Things are not working. And just the basic truth of that and the basic unfairness in the disparate impact of the way things are not working is so essential to our experience of Americans at this moment that I think there's something really powerful about it.
And within the system, I mean, most of what we cover as political news is actors by people who are within the political system. And right now, one of the two parties, in the form of President Obama and this very high-profile Senate candidate, Elizabeth Warren in particular, are trying to say the system shouldn't be so broken. The system can be fixed so that it does address mainstream Americans' concerns and not just the concerns of the people who are doing great right now and the people who screwed us over, i.e. Wall Street. Is the message itself important that they are even trying, or do they need to be offering something very concrete that'll make a difference in people's lives in order to connect people back to the political system?
I go really back and forth on this, right? Because at a certain level, that message is diluted because we all know that Barack Obama raises tons of money from Wall Street. And Nancy Pelosi, God bless her, who I love and think is a great politician and has great politics, also raises a lot of money from Wall Street. They all do. They all have to. That's the way the system works. And people,
that's where all the money is.
That's where all the money is. And the point that you made actually in the opening is a really important one. The very perverse and vicious cycle of the disparate sort of recoveries we have is that there's even more money in Wall Street now, and politicians are growing more dependent on fundraising from Wall Street, which is really, really perverse. So I think that message is diluted by the campaign finance system we have, where it is harder for people to credibly believe the distinction is as great as they would want it to be, and that it's partially a product of the fact that Republicans are able to obstruct and subvert and destroy a lot of the initiatives that really would help working class people.
What's going going to happen with this protest movement? It's starting to spread around the country. People are starting to move beyond, I think, the frustration, the perceived, I think, impotence of direct action politics, which I think is just a class distinct, which is just as a political tactic, as a class. As it doesn't go away and as it spreads to other movements, do you see the political system on the left embracing it at all, or do you think it stays outside the system?
I think, so there was a report in Crain's today about a bunch of New York City unions that are going to go down and join the protests on Wednesday, which I think was a sort of major step. The transit workers, particular transit workers, are a good militant union. They had a strike here in New York a few years ago. So I do think that people understand that even if they felt some misgivings at the beginning, or I don't know what the demands are, and I understand those. I mean, I had those same feelings myself in the beginning, that there is some actual genuine energy here. And you know what? At the end of the day, I was having this conversation with someone else. What else is working right now?
Yeah.
Honestly, look around you. What else is working? People feel like, well, let's take a flyer on something else.
Direct action, for all the frustrations that it causes, it very often gets the goods. It really does.
Yeah.
In a way that doesn't get much credit. Chris Hayes, editor-at-large of The Nation, host of MSNBC's new weekend morning show, Up with Chris Hayes, which is great, and I think everybody should watch it no matter what time you go to bed on Friday or Saturday. Chris, congratulations thus far, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, Rachel.